Once again, people, y'all already know what it is. This is your man, Swat Gonzalez. True Story Podcast Network. We still live. Today, to who do we have the honor of speaking to?
Ronald Hampton.
Ronald Hampton. Mr. Hampton, what do you do and what brings you to this type of work?
Well, I'm a retired Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer. I worked there for 24 years, from 1970 to 1994. And then from 1987 to 2010, I served as Executive Director of the National Black Police Association. From 2000 to 2019, I served as a law enforcement fellow at the Institute for Public Safety and Justice at the University of District of Columbia. And I guess I've been an activist all my life. It started when I was in the military. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was in the Air Force. And, at the time that I went in 1966, we were just barely out of segregation, and so there was racism, discrimination, and everything else in the military, and I just refused to yield to that. And then came out and joined the police department thanks to a friend of mine, because I just didn't want to be a police officer. That wasn't what my goal was. But he talked me into it, and like everything that I think, when things happen to you, what I think you ought to do is you ought to somehow know, you ought to study, you ought to research and find out what it is. And I mean, I knew what policing in this country was about, but going back, reading up the history and looking at the history of policing in this country, I familiarized myself with it, and it wasn't something that worked for black folk. It would work against black people, but it wasn't something that worked for. Plus, policing was an enforcer of slavery as well as discrimination and racism. That was the government's enforcement component as it related to it. And I believe that we're seeing that again, because these federal forces that have been deputized by the Orange Man in the White House is doing the very things that he wants them to do, and they're brutalizing people, they're killing people, and it's not good. It hasn't been good.
I mean, I was moved by your speech yesterday, where you said we've been trying to reform the system for 150 years and nothing has changed.
That's right.
And when I heard that, I was really moved, because I was formerly incarcerated myself at the age of 17 for a crime I didn't commit. Mm-hmm. I spent 31 years in prison, and I always felt that it was because my mother is black and I come from a black Hispanic family, mm-hmm. and I couldn't get no justice because my mother was black and poor and illiterate. So when you said that, it really touched me, because I was like, wow. Because in this country, when we talk to former or current police officers, it's always the mentality, it's us against them. You never hear it from the perspective that I'm telling this today, which is, no, there is racism in the police department.
Oh, of course it is.
And the police department is part of that extension of slavery.
Well, that's true. They were the enforcers of slavery in our society. They were the ones who, if you ran away, if you were enslaved and ran away, then the police were charged with the responsibility of going to get you to bring you back. That's where the term paddywhacking comes from. Paddywhacking, it was a police truck that went out and picked up the slaves, caught them up. When they ran away, put them in the paddy wagon and bring them back and turn them back over to the farmers.
So knowing this, for the people that's out there that might be them young boys, they might want to be cops, do you still encourage them to join the force?
Yeah, I think they do, because there's some change that must take place inside the institution, and then there are forces in our society that force change from the outside. So it's a two-pronged thing. During the time that I was on the police force and serving as the executive director of the National Black Police Association, we were able to do a great deal of things because we were on the inside. If you're a victim of racism and discrimination and you recognize that, then you go get a lawyer and then you sue the police departments. There were components, there were agencies in the Department of Justice before the Orange Man and his crew came that sought out complaints from police departments and corrections departments, discrimination departments, and then they would file lawsuits against those departments based on whatever the workplace discrimination or racism was, and then there was an attempt to correct those problems within the police department. There was actually an agency in the Department of Justice called the Special Litigation Division that was charged with the responsibility of not only carrying out the dictates of the court when they were sued and the decision was rendered, but they also provided leadership to oversee those changes as they took place within police department, corrections, and other agencies. Those places or things, those agencies don't exist now because the Orange Man and his crew, they have eliminated all remnants of those agencies. The Civil Rights Division, they're weak and toothless tigers now because that's not the case. But it's important that people, I believe, understand how the institution work, how racism work in this country, how discrimination work in this country. Because at one time, for example, it was overt. Before it was against the law to discriminate, it was overt discrimination. Then when the Civil Rights Act was established and the other laws were established by the Congress of this country, then what happened was that those laws were put in place, and then discrimination was against the law, and then racism didn't disappear, it went covert. But we still are struggling today with racism and discrimination. This racism and discrimination that cause you to be arrested, thrown into prison, 31 years served in prison for a crime that you didn't commit. That wouldn't happen to a white person. We don't see those kind of situations happening to white people. They happen to black people. They happen to Hispanic people, and sometimes women. That women are the newest and largest trend of individuals, black women going to prison in this country today.
Yep. So, in your many years of service, what is the one thing that you wish you could have done different to effect change?
Probably been more aggressive, because what I found out being aggressive was, and I was aggressive. There were times when I reported other police officers for police brutality. There were times when I spoke up when something was wrong. There were times I sued police departments. I was involved in suing other police departments, not only nationally, but internationally. There were times when we were responsible for the creation of a black police association in Canada that exists now. There's a black police association in the United Kingdom. We were responsible for developing and helping them sisters and brothers develop organizations. We've even had meetings in the UK. We've had meetings in Canada. The thing that I wish that maybe I should have, or would have wanted to be more aggressive, because what we found out is that the people who perpetrate racism and discrimination were cowards. And so the way you deal with a coward is you take them out. And that's what we did to some extent. The thing that I'm disappointed about is that a great deal of the changes that we were able to bring about were what we call superficial and surface changes, because it had more to do with the culture of this country rather than something that was operating on the surface. I mean, just let me give you an example. We, in the police department I worked in, we've had black leaders. Someone would think that just because you have a black leader, then racism and discrimination don't exist any longer. That's not true. Because it's not a black system, it's a white system. This country is a white country. And so as a result of the foundation of this country and what had happened in this country, then you could have black leadership, but that don't mean that racism and discrimination does not exist or does not happen. We've had a black president in this country, and it's probably going to be the first and only and last black president that we've ever had, because that was the timing that enabled Barack Obama to become president. But did that eliminate racism in this country? Did that eliminate discrimination?
Absolutely
Did that eliminate sexism in this country? Hell no.
So I just want to thank you, because I think that our younger generation needs to hear your voice, needs to hear voices of people that's been in the system, working with the system, right? And it's not all us against them. I'm gonna keep saying that.
No, it's not. It's not.
My brother served in the police force in New York City for 37 years. 37 years. Decorated detective, and his whole time in the force was spent trying to effect change.
All right.
Trying to effect change. So when I see people like you, I'm really inspired, because it helps me deal with my own bias.
I understand.
It helps me deal with that. And at the same time, I'm honored to be next to you, because not every black former cop or cop is part of that system. They just work in the system to affect change in a different way. Sometimes we could affect that change, sometimes we can't, because it's a process. Like you said yesterday, we've been trying to reform this system for 150 years, and it's still the same. And for those that don't understand what that means, is that it might take another 150 years. It don't mean that we give up. It don't mean that we won't participate in that change.
Absolutely.
So
we can't afford to give up.
No, so I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope I can get you on another interview tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Sometime,
Yes, sir.
because seriously, you need to be doing your own podcast, sir. And I'm here telling you in front of millions of people that's going to hear this. If you ever want to do your own podcast, call me. I own a network and you on.
Okay.
And no matter where you are in the world, I can make you sound like you in the studio. You know, because I just.
Well, what I do, I'll think about that. I'll think about that, my brother.
Because you just don't understand the knowledge you just dropped, and how people is going to hear it, right? Because we normally don't hear this side. Well, all we hear is, if you did it, if we arrested you, must have did it. No. You know, because a lot of our community, especially the black and brown community, are living in fear.
That's true. That's
because
true.
of our current government. So anything they put out there about blacks and Latinos, they believe it all the way.
Yeah.
And you here to say, you know what? I was a cop all these years, and this racism in the inside too. And it's not just.
The system is corrupt and have been corrupt. It was built on a corrupt foundation, and the foundation that was corrupt about it said that it had, in order for it to be effective, it had to work a certain way. And it wasn't arresting white people. There were laws in place in this country, for example, called rape of a white woman.
Yes.
That meant that a black man raped a white woman. There were never laws in this country that said rape of a black woman, because black women was enslaved, and white men raped them and did whatever they wanted to do to them. So what we had to do is understand our history of this country and